If you've ever struggled with apologies, you're not alone. It's been a challenge for all of us since the beginning of creation. It began with Adam and Eve. We recall how God created the Garden of Eden with fruits and vegetables of all kinds, and God gave just one instruction: not to eat from the tree of knowledge. Of course, it didn't take long for both Adam and Eve to indulge in this tree despite God's warnings. And when they did, their eyes were opened and they became aware of their nakedness. For the first time, they learned that actions have consequences and that they're capable of mistakes. When God asks what they had done, they could have come clean, but instead they made another choice. They responded defensively. "You put the woman at my side," Adam exclaimed. "She gave it to me and I ate it." "The serpent duped me and I ate," Eve replied. Adam and Eve acknowledged that they had both eaten from the tree. They had defied God's orders. While they deserved credit for that piece of honesty, they fell short in their insistence that they were not at fault. Adam blamed Eve, and Eve blamed the serpent. They didn't refute their actions, but absolved themselves of responsibility for them. Adam and Eve committed the first sin for which there would never be an apology. It was the first time, but as we know, it's certainly not the last. After all, who of us here today has not hurt someone, whether intentionally or unintentionally? And who of us has not failed to give an apology when it was due? During the High Holy Days, we often emphasize forgiveness because each of us want to be forgiven for the times that we miss the mark. And yet the ancient rabbinic texts teach us that forgiveness is actually secondary. We can experience the fullness of the High Holy Days even if we are not yet ready to forgive, but we cannot get the most out of this season if we are not willing to do the work of teshuvah and the work of apology. That is why we spend so much time on Yom Kippur, as we just did moments ago, practicing the skill of apology. We list the sins for which we are all collectively responsible, pound our chests, and vow to do better. Our Machzor reminds us that this holiest day of the year, it reminds us on this holiest day of the year that atonement is not something to be avoided. Our holiest act of the season is not fasting or praying, though both are important, if we can safely do it, health-wise. But the most important act is actually the sacred practice of apology, which when done right can enhance our lives and give us healing. While most of us can detect a heartfelt apology when we're on the receiving end of it, we're less trained in how to offer one. And this may date back to childhood. When a child hits or says something hurtful, most of us instruct the child to say sorry. We teach them that the words, "I'm sorry," are a panacea, erasing the mistakes that they have made and absolving them of all responsibility. If a child apologizes in a way that we deem to be insincere, how many of us ask the child to say sorry again like they mean it? We don't ask if they mean it, mind you, just that they sound like they do. How often does this interaction include a conversation about how the children feel or what an apology should actually entail? How often does it include introspection? Instead, we teach our children to apologize not because they are sorry, but because it's the polite thing to do. And if that wasn't enough, experiences of being forced into reluctant apologies as children can make us even more likely to offer them as adults. It's no wonder that many of us struggle to offer sincere apologies. Elton John wasn't wrong when he said that sorry is the hardest word. But it's harder still to provide these words with meaning and with intention. Even in the 12th century, Maimonides realized how difficult this process could truly be. Borrowing from the wisdom of Jewish scholars before him, he codified a teshuvah process And this teshuvah process, for which Rabbi Daniel Ruttenberg recently expanded upon in a book that combines Maimonides' teachings with modern victim-centric insights from sociology and psychology. In it, she explains that there are 5 stages to repentance: humbly admitting a mistake, beginning to change, making amends, apologizing, and making different choices the next time. Perhaps these steps will be helpful to us as they have been for so many generations past. The first one, humbly admitting a mistake. A teshuvah process always begins with humility. It requires us to be vulnerable, to sit in a place of discomfort and introspection, which many of us would perhaps rather avoid. It requires courage and strength. Without a willingness to do this, the entire process falls apart. There are countless examples of people in positions of power who, after expressing a racist statement, for example, contend that they could not have done this because they do not have a racist bone in their bodies. This is a failure of humility and responsibility. Admitting culpability opens the possibility that change might be needed. Claiming those bones aren't racist at all is a way of saying that no change is necessary, writes Rabbi Daniel Ruttenberg. This resistance to facing harm head-on is a form of gaslighting, she says, a manipulative way of denying reality which piles more harm on top of the original offense. Much like Adam and Eve, who deflected responsibility to other parties, we might find ourselves seeking to evade accountability, to avoid feelings of guilt or shame, discomfort, or insecurity. We might become so resistant to vulnerability that, like Adam and Eve, we are willing to vilify another person rather than to take responsibility for ourselves. If we equate our errors with our sense of self-worth or see admitting wrongdoing as a demonstration of weakness, the entire undertaking might feel completely impossible. That is perhaps why there are so many examples of people failing to offer apologies or offering false ones. And yet repentance doesn't exist without naming the harm that has been caused. It requires us to do what Adam and Eve could not, to own and take this responsibility for our mistakes. We must have willingness to acknowledge what we have done and to place others' needs above our own. It's hard work, but most things that are worthwhile truly are. A well-placed apology can set the stage for healing within ourselves and others in a way that is anything but weak. When musical artist Lizzo released the song Girls last summer, it received an immediate backlash that she hadn't anticipated at all over her lyric, "I am a spaz." She received upset messages, such as this one by Hannah Deviney. "Hey Lizzo, my disability, cerebral palsy, is actually literally classified as spastic diplegia. Spasticity refers to an unending painful tightness in my legs. Your new song makes me pretty angry and sad. Spaz doesn't mean freaked out or crazy. It's an ableist slur. It's 2022, do better." Now, Lizzo could have been defensive, as many of us perhaps would be. She could have stood by the words in her song saying that spaz has many meanings, actually. But instead, she listened to the hurt that she was hearing, and she had the humility to respond. Within 3 days, she had not only taken down the song and taken responsibility for her actions, she had acted to correct her error. She re-recorded the entire song with new lyrics before issuing a public apology in which she vowed to do better. By owning her mistake, Lizzo did something rare in the celebrity world. She had the courage and strength to admit wrongdoing, to make the necessary change. Her action brought immediate healing to those she hurt. Whereas her mistake had caused divisiveness, her apology had created an opportunity for repair. 2, our second step, beginning to change. At Camp Newman this summer, one camper made a racist statement that felt threatening and deeply insulting to fellow bunkmates. The camper was willing to apologize, but words alone felt insufficient. Rabbi Ali and the Newman staff faced a dilemma in how to respond. After talking it through, they decided to send the camper home temporarily. If they wished to return, they could go through a process of study, exploring why their remark caused so much pain, and engage in repair work to correct the incident. The camper had made a grave error, but the camp wisely provided a chance for redemption, and the camper took it, beginning what we hope will be a beautiful process of growth and of change. Each of us make mistakes. It's part of life. The question is what we do with those mistakes. Rabbi Alan Liu teaches, if you haven't done the work, you'll get back there. When we do not acknowledge our growth areas or grapple with the harm that we have caused, we make the same mistakes repeatedly until we're ready to do the work. This could take the form of sabotaging relationships or lashing out in anger or quashing dissent to preserve the status quo, explains Rabbi Ruttenberg. In one way or another, the challenges haven't been addressed, and so they will keep resurfacing. As an example, she points to the United States of America's unwillingness to take full responsibility for the enslavement of people of African descent. We may no longer enslave people, but white supremacy continues to rear its ugly head, whether in the form of lynchings, Jim Crow laws, redlining, mass incarceration, or voter suppression. The precise nature of the harm may be different, she explains, just as the sabotage and lasting out in relationships may not look exactly the same each time, but the patterns are undeniable. We all have patterns requiring attention. This is called our soul curriculum for anyone who's studied Musar before. Alan Marinis explains, the sooner you become familiar with your curriculum and get on with mastering it, the faster you'll get free of these habitual patterns. Then you will suffer less. Then you will cause less suffering to others. Then you will make the contribution to the world that is your unique and highest potential. True change takes time. It may require education or therapy or journaling or other kinds of support, but should we choose to engage, we will be much better for it. 3, make amends, and 4, apologize. Teshuvah's 3rd and 4th steps are actually mentioned in Maimonides' teachings in the very same sentence. After owning mistakes and beginning to change, we strive to do something to make up for our errors. We fix the borrowed car that we crashed, we repair the window that we broke, or we replace the child's lollipop that we knocked onto the floor. We do what we can to restore what is broken. What's fascinating is that Maimonides' steps of Teshuvah, is how late we come to the step of apology, though there is actually great wisdom in this. An apology that's offered too early is no apology at all. Our culture often demands instant apologies, whether from a small child or from a celebrity on Twitter. This pressure to apologize before doing the necessary soul searching leads to false apologies that often do far more harm than good. All of us know what I'm talking about. They're the false apologies that we've heard and perhaps even uttered ourselves when we felt we needed to say something before we were ready. They're the apology that shifts focus and blame, the sorry you feel that way apology, or the if you were offended, I'm so sorry apology. This apology isn't about accepting responsibility. Instead, it changes the focus. It, like Adam and Eve's non-apology, deflects responsibility. There's the vague apology. I'm sorry for whatever I might have done that might have upset you. The passive mistakes were made apology. Or the I'm sorry but. There's the that wasn't my intention so you shouldn't feel hurt apology. Or the can't we just put this behind us apology? These false apologies offered too early in the teshuvah process demonstrate a lack of reflection, of humility, in a victim-centered consciousness. A false apology sends the message, I don't think you have a right to be upset. A sincere apology honors another person's feelings, affirms them, and expresses a genuine desire to take action, to do better in the future. But this is never instantaneous. It always takes time. Brings us to number 5, make better choices. After we complete each step of the teshuvah process, we aspire to teshuvah gemara, a complete repentance. After sitting in discomfort, after engaging in our soul curriculum, making amends, offering apologies, we hope that we have so changed that if placed in the exact same position again, we would now do better. These 5 steps enable us to become better versions of ourselves. When this happens, true healing is possible. For example, Danya Ruttenberg points to when Lindy West confronted her troll online. Now, Lindy West is no stranger to trolls on Twitter. As a feminist writer, unapologetically fat, she received her share of hate messages over the years. But one day in 2015, she experienced an abusive tweet that sent her reeling. Someone had created a Twitter account based on her recently deceased father, just to upset her. West wrote a blog post about the pain that this troll had caused as she grieved for a father who she loved. At some point, she received an email from the person who had trolled her herself. It said, I don't know why or even when I started trolling you. I think my anger toward you stems from your happiness with your own being. It offended me because it served to highlight my unhappiness with my own self. Trolling you was the lowest thing I've ever done. When you included it in your last Jezebel article, it finally hit me. There is a living, breathing human being who is reading this. I'm attacking someone who never harmed me in any way. I'm done being a troll. I apologize. I made a donation in memory to your father, and I wish you the best. This is what is possible when we engage in the teshuvah process. She humbly took responsibility. She demonstrated introspection and growth. She made amends. She apologized, and she changed her behavior. Her process of teshuvah was not one of weakness, but one of strength that transformed her life for the better. Teshuvah, Rabbi Ruttenberg writes, is like the Japanese art of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. You can never unbreak what you have broken, but with a sincere and deep work of transformation, acts of repair have the potential to make something new. Teshuvah is a gift to anyone we have hurt and to ourselves. Through teshuvah, we allow ourselves to confront the things that hold us back from being the best version of ourselves that we are capable of becoming. We advance our soul curriculum to bring more joy and healing and supportive relationships into our lives. May this Yom Kippur be a calling, encouraging us to engage in the sacred practice of apology more deeply. Is there someone in your life who you hurt, unintentionally or intentionally? Perhaps it's a neighbor or an ex, a family member or a coworker or a friend. Perhaps it's someone we lost track of long ago. What would it be like to delve deeply into why we made the choices we did? What would it be like to take responsibility and make amends and apologize and grow from the experience? One midrash teaches that teshuvah was created at the beginning of the world before the 6th day could be completed. Even before people made their very first mistake, God believed that we were capable of repair. From the beginning, God believed that though we will make mistakes, we need not be defined by them, that admitting them isn't a sign of weakness, but one of strength, leading to a more fulfilling and peaceful life. Today, we are called to this practice that God envisioned so many years ago. Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav once said, if you believe that you can damage, believe that you can fix. If you believe that you can harm, believe that you can heal. May 5784 be a year of growth and healing for us all. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.